This is Heath Sanders, and you're listening to TNCRadio.live.
Welcome in, TNC Radio.live. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show. And now here's your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yes, this is the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNC Radio.live, where we offer the news, information, traffic, weather, sports, and entertainment our commercial drivers want and need. With the new year, there are many new challenges for trucking, as many of our drivers already know. One big one is the California ban that prohibits trucks older than 2010 to drive in that state. That's impacting at least 230,000 trucks. It's a result of the California Air Resources Board's truck and bus regulation. That phases out every pre-2010 engine. We wanted more detail on what's happening with this regulation at a time that has had serious supply chain backups. We invited Jay Grimes, Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA, to speak with us about this as well as some other issues. Welcome, Jay. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Great to be with you. I think this is my first time joining you guys, and always happy to discuss current trucking issues and topics.
Oh, we really appreciate it, and you folks are a wealth of information. You know, the California ban is really wide-reaching, and it seems like it could put a serious crimp on incoming and outgoing freight in California. What's happening? What does all this mean?
Yeah, it really means that any truck or older than 2010 and any engine older than 2010 is not going to be allowed to register in California, and according to the rule of law, won't be allowed to run through the state. So, you know, you mentioned over 200,000 vehicles might be impacted. We've seen estimates for owner-operators about potentially 75,000 owner-operators with vehicles older than 2010, won't be allowed to renew registration within California. So I think it's another example, especially out in California with the California Air and Resources Board, where they're really making it more and more difficult, especially for small businesses, to keep up operating in California. Some of these emission rules, very costly to comply with, especially when you look at the new vehicle markets today, and even the used vehicle markets, especially in light of the pandemic. And over the last year or two or so, we've been really working with a lot of industry partners in hopes that CARB would extend implementation of this rule for about another year, but they've decided to move forward with it. And we're still early on in that implementation, and probably a little too early to tell exactly what the impacts will be. But I don't think it's gonna. I think it is gonna, question if drivers want to stay operational in California. Certainly, it's going to add a lot more price tags if they're going to have to invest in a newer truck, in a newer engine to be in compliance with this rule.
Oh, my goodness, especially with the costs today, with the hyperinflationary prices. I don't know how anyone can be competitive and make money. Now, doesn't this ban also impact owner-operators who are outside the state of California? They just simply can't come in if their truck's older than that?
That's the way I interpret it. It's a little different to see how strong enforcement is going to be out there in California. It's a little more, I think, difficult for them to know exactly where the trucks are running if they're not domiciled in California. But it does create a risk for anyone operating an older engine in California, with hefty fines, penalties as well, possibility of your truck being impounded. So, again, as I mentioned, there's more and more CARB emissions rules that have made it difficult to operate in California. You look at some of the labor laws, including AB 5. It's really created a confusing and messy environment out there on the West Coast. Obviously throughout the pandemic, we saw at some of the major ports the delays and backups there. That has certainly contributed to increased costs for new and used vehicle markets. One key component of this rule is that if you have an older vehicle, older than 2010, but if you have a upgraded engine or a newer engine, you're still allowed to operate. And at a time, for a time, a lot of our members were investing in glider kits, but a recent federal rule that has gone into effect over the past couple of years has really hampered the glider kit industry and made those a lot more difficult to invest in or to purchase. So a lot of challenges facing drivers who have to, in this case, buy some new equipment if they want to run in California.
Jay, are we going to see a plethora of warehouses along the state border of California where people drive in and drop off their load and somebody who can drive in California picks it up and does the last bit?
Yeah, I think that's going to be one possibility. It's going to be really interesting to see how the freight industry, kind of adapts to this rule. And again, we'll kind of see what the overall impacts are, I think, a couple months down the line when we start to get some more of the data. But yeah, I think that's certainly one option, which, is going to, just create, I think, some more obstacles. Though it's going to create more costs for the consumer down the line.
Oh yeah.
And again, I think you'll see some more supply chain delays there if that ends up being the case.
You would think in the state of California that relies so heavily on freight with agriculture and everything else, they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. Yeah,
no doubt. And, we've heard it from our members who have operated for decades out in California. They're wondering if it starts not to make any economic sense for them with all these different vehicle rules, emissions rules, and now labor rules as well. So it is going to be interesting to see if California, takes a look at some of these laws and regulations on the books and makes an effort to try and make them more workable and practical for the trucking industry, especially for small businesses and independent owner and operators. Unfortunately, we've been working with the state on quite a few issues, and we haven't had much success or cooperation with California in trying to make some of these rules more workable. But if they start to feel the economic hits on their end, I think you'll see them come around, hopefully. But again, it's kind of wait and see on that for right now.
Well, certainly with the type of shipments they have, those are time sensitive. Produce has a short lifespan.
No
and
doubt.
If people say, the heck with this, we're not going to deal with you. I would think there'd be a lot of pressure in Sacramento at that point.
Yeah, no question. And then, I think they know the trucking groups and the drivers and the industry representatives to get a hold of. We've been knocking on their doors for quite a while. We were really, we were really hopeful that California would extend this 2010 rule at some point over the year. Just, when this legislation was passed, I think, 15 years ago. And who could have foreseen the impacts of COVID and the supply chain that we were dealing with just as this rule was about to go in effect? And we thought, it was a common sense a move to delay this action, give drivers more time to prepare, give kind of these vehicle markets a little more time to adjust. But unfortunately, that was not the case. So they can be pretty stubborn in their ways in California. But again, if we see these shipments not being able to make it, especially in the produce and agriculture market, I think they're going to start listening.
Oh, that would be good.
Jay, the problem with Chicken Little is the sky didn't actually fall. And I feel like Chicken Little, as I've been running around saying this is going to be an issue. This is going to be an issue in California. And I wonder really if the only way to fix this is to let the sky fall. Quit trying to let it happen. And until they see that this is not going to be a workable solution, I don't think they're going to do anything about it.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I tend to agree with you there that, I know us and others, the Western States Trucking Association has really been vocal and adamant on this particular issue, and we've provided, plenty of warnings to the state legislator and the state officials up there in Sacramento, and it might take, a big wake-up call for them to finally start listening, and we hope that doesn't end up happening, and we know the trucking industry, better than a lot of industries, can adapt quickly, can figure out a way to overcome all the different challenges, but I do think, until they start, really feeling some of the effects that we've been telling them about, there might not be any really helpful actions that could help drivers stay on the roads out there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, don't help California. Just do what you do, and if that means you can't drive over there anymore, don't drive over there anymore. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any other way to fix it other than let the sky fall, right?
That's right. I agree with that. And unfortunately, so many regulators, hindsight's 2020. They're like, "Oops, we didn't see that coming." they need. How about we give them glasses so they can see the future? Wouldn't that be nice? And they can see how short-sighted some of these regulations really, really are. It just makes me scratch my head.
And on some issues, the regulators, can kind of say that with a straight face. But on this one, we've been knocking down the doors, have been alerting them for quite a while. So, unfortunately, they haven't quite gotten the message yet, and we'll see what it will take from an economic perspective to finally hear the message that we've been trying to get across.
There you go. We do have to go to break here, Jay. There's so much more to discuss and unpack. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. We're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. Stay tuned for more great information coming up.
This info blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Mental health resources for truck drivers. Truck drivers are the backbone of America. They're the unsung heroes. Nearly every good consumed in the United States has been transported in a truck. Because of how challenging truck driving is, truck drivers often portray the image of being tough. Mental health is not a discussion that many truckers will have among each other. The truth is, truck drivers are human. They have their emotional and mental struggles just like every other working American. The only difference is that truck drivers face unique factors that put them more at risk for depression and other serious mental health issues. According to the Transport Workers Union, 1 in 5 truck drivers has experienced mental health issues. Depression and anxiety are the top mental issues that truck drivers face. Mental health resources for truck drivers. With truck drivers spending more time on the road than at home, it can be difficult to get help for their mental health struggles. Now, thanks to modern-day technology, truck drivers can get help right from their smartphones. Esper. Esper is a national behavioral health company with a mission to help people and organizations reach their full potential. Esper offers a continuum of behavioral health care from acute to chronic health conditions to leadership development, including Fit to Pass, a coaching program to assist professional drivers in maintaining good health and pass their DOT recertification physical exams. BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest e-counseling platform. They have access to licensed, trained, experienced, and accredited psychologists, marriage and family therapists, clinical social workers, and board-licensed professional counselors. To get starters, take a quick questionnaire and BetterHelp will match you with a therapist that's right for you. Mutts for Trucks. Mutts for Trucks is an organization that helps truck drivers find the perfect four-legged friend for the road. Their mission is to bring more good to a community that brings so much good to us. It's been proven that owning a dog can drastically decrease isolation, depression, and cardiovascular disease. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a national network of local crisis centers that provides free and confidential emotional support to people in suicidal crisis or emotional distress 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Their number is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. If you feel that you need help for your mental health struggles while on the road, we also recommend reaching out to your carrier and seeing what options they may have available for you. For more information on mental health, go to the blog section at The Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelby Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. We've been talking about the California ban on trucks with engines older than 2010. Jay, you've had some great information and thoughts on this. Personally, I think most people in trucking can see the insanity of this regulation and the mess it's going to cause. I think a lot of people are also fearful that these kind of regulations could spread from California across the nation. Have you heard any rumblings about that, or you think that's something that it's an unfounded fear?
No, certainly we've seen some examples of that. Haven't heard anything specifically related to this older than 2010 regulation, but, we've seen certainly over the last few weeks, the EPA here in Washington, D.C. Publish some more emissions regulations, basing a lot of their rules from California when it comes to nitrous oxide emissions and implementing a model year 2027 timeline for heavy duty vehicles that when you talk to the truck and engine manufacturers, they say that's too quick of a timeline for us to meet. And, we can't guarantee that the new 2027 vehicles are going to be reliable or affordable for consumers. And that's kind of a consistent theme that we see from EPA and environmental regulations, and a lot of the EPA regulations are based off of CARB's policies and CARB's rules. So there's certainly a carryover when you look at CARB and some of the federal rules that have been proposed, in some cases been implemented. And unfortunately, again, we've told the EPA over and over again that when these rules are rolled out nationwide, the trucking industry, for whatever reason, seems to be a guinea pig, and it costs drivers time and money to go into the shop when these newer vehicles with all these emissions technologies, break down.
Sure. And
aren't aren't reliable as they should be. I'm afraid that could be the case again here come 2027. And, there's some other proposals and I think kind of action plans that we've seen from EPA, by 2050 having zero emission vehicles all on the road and moving away from gas and diesel engines. And, we're fairly skeptical on some of those actions and really want to see a lot more evidence and that is achievable by 2050. And if those vehicles are going to be reliable for the trucking industry.
It does seem like a lot of the regulators coming up with these ideas and regulations are living in a utopian world. They don't understand practical application. They don't even understand the industry that they're regulating. And it's so wide-reaching, it just seems like total insanity.
No question. That's one of the challenges we have in Washington in dealing with the 435 members in the House of Representatives, 100 senators, the thousands and thousands of bureaucrats across the federal government. There's not a whole big percentage of them that have real-world experience when it comes to the trucking industry. Yeah. And that's evident in some of these proposals that we see time and time again. That's really where it's critical for drivers out there to contact, their local lawmakers at the state level, their representatives here in Washington, D.C., because we see when these representatives hear directly from the drivers out there who are experiencing the daily challenges, who can tell their story to the lawmakers, they do gain a little bit of understanding and say, maybe these, overly burdensome emissions regulations don't quite add up and are going to put a lot of people out of business. And that's not going to be great for my constituents back home. So that's always important for us to kind of educate some of these lawmakers who don't know a whole lot about trucking, to give them a better understanding and really try and, make them see, the negative consequences that these overreaching one-size-fits-all regulations are going to have for drivers, and then, the consequences for the economy at large as well.
Jay, in the last segment, you mentioned briefly AB5. Have you, from your perspective, seen an impact yet on drivers in California regarding AB5?
Oh, no doubt. The confusion that it's caused for drivers. We get calls in our Kansas City office every day on this, and still not getting a whole lot of clarity from California, perhaps unsurprisingly, there on how it's going to be enforced, which type of drivers it's going to apply to. So it's a big mess. Again, I don't think it's attracting any drivers to the industry when you look at AB5, and there's a lot of legal cases still ongoing that we're involved with, and really, we think AB5 creates a whole mess of problems when it comes to leased on owner-operators and independent drivers who don't want to be classified as an employee. And you look at the problematic ABC test that AB5 requires. So, that's another one when you AB5 combined with these stringent environmental rules in California. I don't think it creates a great economic or working environment for many owner-operators and truckers out there.
It doesn't even seem to be clear how AB5 would apply.
I'm Ron Sandy.
A small fleet company out of St. Louis who happens to have runs going out to California, and they're doing things as independent contractors. It's not even clear how that would apply, is it?
Exactly. When you look at interstate commerce and the types of loads going through California, where the carrier is domiciled from, it seems like a patchwork, enforcement and regulation scenario where really nobody knows how California is going to prioritize who they're going to enforce AB5 on, and what types of characters the rules are going to apply to. So again, this has now been a few years in the process where we saw AB5 kind of get enacted, and trucking got thrown into a whole host of other industries. As we know, trucking, especially when it comes to classification of workers, is very unique, very diverse, and it's again not a one-size-fits-all industry. And AB5, takes that approach, which as we've seen already, has devastating impacts. And we're still involved in the legal process, and again, another one where California might have to feel some pain before they start taking any, significant action to kind of, again, have some more practical, workable laws in place.
Well, it seems like the Department of Revenue there is really being kind of a big bully. It's impacting a lot of different vocations. People who are out of state all of a sudden get a tax bill because they're a business versus an employee, that sort of thing, and they owe California. Mm-hmm. How is this not in violation of the Interstate Commerce Clause or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we think there needs to be some more clear definitions, rules, and more common sense applicability between, what's defined as, interstate commerce versus intrastate commerce. And perhaps if those rules were implemented, that could clear up a lot of the confusion when it comes to some of these tax laws and classification laws as well.
Well, I know a lot of people are saying, to heck with it. I'm not going to deal with anybody in California because it's just not worth the headache, Yeah,
that's a familiar refrain, and you can't blame them if that's the option that they choose. And unless these rules are repealed or adapted to make it a little more easier for small businesses and owner-operators and leased-on drivers to operate in California without all the paperwork hassles, without all the extra taxes and the paperwork, we're probably only going to see more and more drivers choose to operate in different areas or different regions.
Sure. Well, let's face it, people like to drive. They're drivers. They don't want to deal with chasing paper and doing paperwork and filing this and filing that. It really takes the fun out of what they're doing. I mean, you want to have at least some enjoyment with what you do for a living.
Not only the fun and enjoyment, and, that's, what our members say a lot. They got into trucking. They became an owner-operator. To have the independence to drive where they want to, when they want to, and a lot of this red tape, kind of takes that benefit away, and not only the fun, but that paperwork requires time and money, and that takes away from the bottom line for a small trucking business, and makes it real difficult to stay in business.
Absolutely. We have to go to break here again, Jay. This is all some very good food for thought. We're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live with Shelley Johnson and Tom Kelly. Stay tuned for more coming up.
For the latest in Houston traffic, weather, news, and information, don't miss the Evening Surge, weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. on TNCRadio.live.
This is Alec Debogorski, and you are listening to TNCRadio.live.
Being on the road can make you feel free, excited, and adventurous. It can also make you feel lonely and even depressed. So it's important for truckers, especially long-haul truck drivers, to bring items on the road to keep them entertained. Truckers have 10 hours off for a 24-hour day. Depending on how long the driver sleeps, there can be several hours where the trucker has nothing to do. We've broken down the list of essential items to keep in your truck in several different categories. The second category we talk about is entertainment. Laptop or tablet. Bring a laptop or tablet and stream your favorite movies or TV shows. If you don't have access to Wi-Fi or a personal hotspot, you can still bring your laptop, some DVDs, and watch a movie. Game console. Playing games is a great way to keep yourself entertained. You can also play with your friends. Bring your Xbox or PlayStation and set up your own gaming station in the cab of your truck. Puzzles, crosswords, or cards. If gaming or watching movies don't interest you, bring some puzzles or crosswords to solve. You can also get a deck of cards and play games like Solitaire, March Same Rank, Devil's Grip, Klondike. Books. Reading books is a great way to pass time and improve brain connectivity. Some popular trucker books include The Highway by C.J. Box, Blue Highways by William Least Heat Moon, Paradise Valley by C.J. Box, Rough Way to the Highway by Kelly Mac McCoy. Exercise equipment. Truck drivers' health suffers from the lack of exercise. Bringing exercise equipment on the road will keep you entertained and improve your overall well-being. There's several portable exercise equipment items you can store in the cab of your truck. They include dumbbells, resistance bands, kettlebells, and running shoes.
Hey, this is the Road Hammers. You're listening to TNCRadio.live.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. We've been talking about some of the California regulations, like a ban on trucks with engines older than 2010, as well as AB 5. Both of these are controversial at best. Jay, what do you see on the horizon this year for the nation? What are some of the regulations and the things that you folks have been working on?
Well, new Congress here in Washington, D.C., the 118th Congress. So a lot of new members have come to town, a lot of new opportunities to educate and meet with those members, but a lot of familiar issues within the trucking industry. For us at OOIDA, one of our top priorities is expanding truck parking capacity, and really excited to kind of keep the momentum going on that front. We've seen legislation be introduced in the House and Senate in previous Congress that unfortunately hasn't been enacted. But when you look at where we are right now versus where we were 5 years ago, it's night and day. How many more supporters we have, and that's a real credit to all the drivers who have been in touch with their lawmakers, been in touch with folks at the Department of Transportation, really getting the message across that we don't need money going toward parking technology and letting drivers know if a spot's open. We need more spaces. Soon, one of our big goals is to reintroduce the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act in the House, in the Senate, to dedicate more than $750 million to build more spaces through different state projects, and all the DOT grant money that's now available since the enactment of the Investment in America Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was enacted in November of 2021. So there's a lot of more money going through DOT, and it's long overdue for some of that money to go towards truck parking projects. Another issue we're working on that we really saw highlighted over the past couple of years is bathroom access for drivers. And the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw shippers and receiving facilities close their bathroom and restroom access for drivers who needed to wash their hands. And, all too familiar story for drivers who can't use the restroom when they need to, Again, we're going to be reintroducing some legislation that would require those facilities to open their restrooms for drivers, so that they can have that amenity, the basic human need there. And of course, one of OOIDA and small business trucking, one of our overall priorities is fighting against harmful regulations, costly regulations that really hurt small businesses. And we're wary of a proposal from FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, that efforts to advance a federal speed limiter mandate that could be implemented on heavy trucks. This is an issue that's been discussed for a number of years. There was a proposal back in 2016 that we thought we were successful in pushing back against, that were kind of reared its ugly head again. Last year, the FMCSA put out an updated proposal. We're expecting they're going to put out another proposal at some point this year. Don't know exactly which direction they're going to go, but we think any speed limiter mandate is going to be really dangerous when it comes to highway safety in creating speed differentials between commercial vehicles and other vehicles on the road. So we're really highlighting opposition.
That's been a real political football. Legislators, I think, keep talking this because it sounds good to their constituents, but they don't realize it really does cause more accidents. I don't know why that's still being bandied about in Washington.
Yep, no doubt about it. The speed differentials are going to create more crashes. When you look at some of the research that's been done on speed limiters, that's what the findings always conclude. So when you're looking at, especially some states out west that have speed limits 75, 80 miles an hour, and then you're going to have a truck that can't go more than 60 or 65 potentially, that's very dangerous, and it's going to result in even more crashes. And when you look at speed limits, this was an issue that I think Congress rightfully has delegated to the states, and I think we've only got 9 states left now that have differential speed limits between trucks and cars, and I think we've seen some states repeal some of these outdated laws that they found unsafe. So we're really weary of the Department of Transportation kind of stepping in and really would be creating a federal speed limit of sorts for so many trucks on the road. Not to mention operational concerns for trucks, as they would need to really take a speed limiter mandate would take control out of drivers' hands. There's environmental impacts as well, but really that highway safety concern is one that we're highlighting and really trying to convey to lawmakers and DOT that this would not be good for highway safety.
Yeah. Well, it only makes sense. And drivers, they need to have the control. If they have to accelerate and they got that limiter, that can cause a major problem too.
Right. And kind of going back to this notion where lawmakers and regulators don't have an understanding of the industry. When FMCSA put this out for public comment again last year, I think there were tens of thousands of comments that they got. And I think most of them were in vocal opposition to the speed limiter mandate. And we're hopeful that DOT will listen to the men and women of the trucking industry, to the drivers who are out there on the roads every day when it comes to some of these rules. And if they did, they would hear that speed limiter mandates is not good for anyone.
That's right. Well, maybe part of this is they forgot how to drive because so many of them are right in limos. They don't drive their own vehicles.
Yeah, that's right. And again, being here in D.C., you do get, we see this all the time in meeting with lawmakers and DOT. A lot of these folks aren't getting outside the Beltway and really listening to the folks in the industry who are dealing with these challenges and issues each day. And, we've heard, we know a lot of fleets use speed limiters right now, and if it works for your business, if it works for your carrier, great. But you should have that choice. It shouldn't be a federal mandate. And we really hope DOT and FMCSA listen to the drivers on this one.
Absolutely. What are some of the other things that you folks have been looking at for this year?
A real hot topic lately is broker issues. We've seen a lot of, unfortunately, an increase in double brokering. And broker reform is a longstanding concern for our members. We want to see improved broker transparency. We're waiting to hear on a petition about that. There's a broker bond rulemaking that potentially could help drivers get fully paid out in a timely fashion on all their claims. But we know that we really want to see some broker reform here at a federal level, because this is an industry that doesn't have the oversight that motor carriers and drivers do. And we see way too often that drivers literally have to pay the price for fraudulent brokers who are operating and putting out loads out there. And we see drivers who aren't getting paid for when they haul loads, a lot of drivers getting taken advantage of. And we really see a lot of brokers who aren't following transparency regulations that are on the books. And frankly, we don't really see a lot of enforcement from DOT, from FMCSA when it comes to these broker issues either. So we want to see some more accountability on the broker end, because again, this is another challenge that's taken money out of drivers' pockets and really making it hard for small businesses to stay afloat.
Absolutely. I know that there are a couple other items you folks are working on as well, but we do have to go to break here. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. We're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. Stay tuned for more terrific information coming up.
5 tips for becoming a great truck driver. Being a truck driver is a rewarding career, but being a great truck driver is even more rewarding. Truck driving is not an easy job. It requires hard work and dedication. Truck drivers take pride in the hard work they do. After all, without truck drivers, our grocery and convenience stores would be empty. Whether you're a rookie or a veteran driver, there's always room to improve your skills as a truck driver. Here are 5 tips for becoming a great truck driver. Safety. Truck driving is considered one of the most dangerous jobs in America, so safety must be a driver's #1 priority. Truck drivers are responsible for keeping their freight, themselves, and other motorists on the road safe. Other drivers on the road may not know the difficulties and challenges truckers face on the road, so truck drivers may have to go the extra mile to ensure everyone's safe on the road. Prioritize health. A truck driver will prioritize their health. After all, taking care of your health can help you have a long-lasting, successful career as a truck driver. It's no secret that truck driving is considered an unhealthy profession. Drivers lack healthy food options, exercise, and a good sleep schedule. Stay compliant with federal regulations. Trucking rules and regulations are monitored by 2 organizations, one at a state level and one at a federal level. The trucking rules and regulations are established at a federal level. Staying compliant with federal regulations is essential for keeping yourself and others safe on the road. It can also save you from getting fines, which in return saves you time and money. Maintain a clean driving record. The best way to avoid traffic violations is to be aware of all the moving and non-moving violations you could get. Certain violations can affect the eligibility to operate a commercial motor vehicle. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration provides a list of violations. If you're issued a citation for FMCSA safety violations, your CDL could be in danger of suspension. Here are some things that can cause you to get a point on your driving record or possibly a suspended CDL. Speeding, following too close, overweight, traffic violation, reckless driving, driving without proper endorsements, logbook errors. Drivers must be aware that any type of violation could result in a loss of their CDL. Balance trucking and home life. The last tip for becoming a great truck driver is balancing truck and home life. Truck driving is hard and demanding work. Becoming a truck driver means spending many hours and days on the road. You'll sacrifice a lot for your trucking career. For many long-haul truck drivers, it's hard to separate life at work from life at home. Learning how to have a balance between home life and work life is essential if you want to have a long-lasting career in trucking.
Catch Landline Now every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, along with an encore presentation weekdays at noon, right here on TNCRadio.live.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Jay Grimes. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at OOIDA. Tom, you said you had a question for Jay.
Yeah, Jay, I want to follow up on the FMCSA's discussion around the brokering stuff. And it's going to tie into my next question, too. But the FMCSA, do they really have any teeth on this one? I mean, what can the FMCSA really do about what is essentially going to be, maybe it should fall in banking regulations? I don't see how they have any real power here, or am I missing something?
Well, I think it's a little bit open for interpretation. We think that when you look at MAP 21, that established a lot of different laws pertaining to broker rules and broker regulations, we see in those laws. So that really gives FMCSA authority to go after some of these brokers, suspend them from doing business. As you mentioned, there are fines that it also gives the option for them to levy. But part of our problem is we have not seen kind of FMCSA prioritize their enforcement authority. So there's differing reasons on why that's the case. We think they do have the authority to go after brokers just the way they do to go after motor carriers. We're hopeful that we did see a notice of proposed rulemaking on broker bond here within this last couple of weeks that would finally kind of implement some of those rules that date back to 2012. That FMCSA sounds like they might take more of an effort. But yeah, when you look at civil penalties and some of these fines that are capped, at $10,000 you mentioned during the break, that's not really a deterrent to drive some of these fraudulent or chameleon brokers from doing something else. So
right.
They found the loopholes in a lot of these broker laws and clearly have found this to be a profitable industry for them without fear of penalty or being taken to court, taken to jail. And it's really difficult for a small business driver where they see a load on a load board, and then when they're about to be paid, there's no money there. And
right.
It's difficult for a lot of our members to kind of do the background research on some of these carriers or brokers that pop up and then disappear and then come back 3 months later. So, yeah, we need to see FMCSA take a more proactive role in enforcing some of the authority that we interpret them to have. But I do think there is a little bit of a debate. If you talk to FMCSA, they might have a difference of opinion there.
Jay, on any given day, Landline Now or TNC Radio will run a story, or you can pick it up on the trucker.com or any of the others that are out there. There'll be a story out there about a driver who's been found to not have a CDL, and it's usually by accident. They stopped him for having a bad brake light or something like that, and one thing leads to another, and they find out that the guy's been running illegally for a number of years, and then they trace it back to a company in, we'll say Middle Texas, just to make something up. And so the driver ends up going to jail, and he gets all these penalties and fines and all that kind of stuff. But then we find out that the company gets fined $10,000, which isn't even a slap. In today's day, if I can run a driver out there for 6 months illegally and make the profit off of that because I'm not paying him what he's worth anyway, $10,000 seems like that's not even a fine. That would be, robbing a bank and having to spend 2 days in jail. That isn't a thing. When are they going to get? I mean, because that's and then the other part of that too is that same company, if they do get blackballed by the FMCSA, well, that's okay. They just change the name. Instead of me owning the company, Jay, tomorrow you own the company, and we still do the same thing, and we call it a different name.
Exactly. These $10,000 fines, are well worth the cost of doing business for some of these carriers that, again, are, taking advantage of the drivers, churning through hundreds and hundreds of drivers to make a profit. It's really an issue that needs to be cleaned up. Again, that infrastructure bill enacted back in 2021, when you look at the increase in funding that FMCSA and the Department of Transportation are receiving, we are really pushing that they use that money wisely and, really try and focus on these chameleon characters, these bad actors, unsafe actors within the industry that are, don't have their certification, don't have safe equipment, really going after these brokers who are really taking advantage of carriers and drivers. Try and point some of that funding to better enforcement on those bad actors.
Well, maybe
has not been the case.
You just gave me an idea. Okay, so the way to fix this is it's $1 million fine, and the money goes back to the FMCSA.
Well, I don't know if we want all that money going back to.
Well, I'm just saying, you don't have to have. We
certainly want to see some more money going into safe and experienced drivers and some of these small business carriers, and that's another issue we're working on as well when it comes to driver compensation. But yeah, no doubt, make it more of a deterrent to not violate regulations in the name of doing business. And you see it, you see it in the crash numbers and the highway safety numbers that for the last 15 years or so continue to trend in the wrong direction. And kind of to close up here, that's really the bottom line, is having practical, common sense regulations that incentivize safe drivers to, better retain drivers, build up the experience, and to have those drivers stay in the industry long term and make trucking a more sustainable career.
Amen to that. So, Jay, where do people reach out to OOIDA to become a member, to ask questions?
OOIDA.com is really where to go to look up a lot of information. Landline.media is a great resource for all trucking news, and fightingfortruckers.com to get the latest news on what's going on here in Washington, D.C. and across different states. So a lot of resources for members and potential members and really anyone who's looking for trucking news, and certainly OOIDA on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Your organization is a wonderful mouthpiece for drivers, owner-operators, the trucking industry, and we're so glad you're out there, and we really appreciate you being on the show. You're a wealth of information, Jay.
Thank you. It's great to be on and really trying to explain some of these complicated issues in a little bit more detail. And thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, that takes talent right there, Jay, explaining regulation in an easy to understand way. Thank you so very much for being on the show.
All right, guys.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned for more great information and entertainment coming up. Thank you for listening to another great interview on TNCRadio.live and the Truckers Network radio show. All of the material you hear on tncradio.live, on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of tncradio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast of the Truckers Network Radio Show.